それでは次のセッション、GoLandで Go コーディングの生産性を向上を始めたいと思います。So please welcome Florin.
Testing. Hey, I can hear myself. Konbanwan, everyone. I hope I spelled it right. Thank you for coming tonight to the JetBrains night. My name is Florin, and I will show you a few tips and tricks on how to improve your productivity with GoLand. For those of you who don't know, GoLand is our Go IDE. It's specialized to editing Go source code. Who among you are Go developers? Raise your hand. Cool, okay. So hopefully I'm gonna teach you something tonight. And yeah, these are my details. You can take a picture if you want, but basically what you should remember is go to blog.jetbrains.com/go to get more information. You can find us on Twitter. You can find myself on Twitter. That's my email address. And we have a Slack channel as well if you're using the Go Slack. And that's about it for me for the introduction. Tonight, let's start rendering an HTML template. So I have this template here. Okay? And this template says it has a title, some users, and we want to render the ID for the user. How can we do that? So first and foremost, if we go to tips, here, the file, we can say read file, because probably I have a file somewhere. So without having any import in my Go file, I can start typing and I get the completion as well as documentation. So this looks a bit silly on my screen. It's a bit too small, but I'm in presentation mode so that you guys in the last row can see. The documentation that we have here also has an example link. This example is a Go test that is written as an example in Go. When you click on it, what we can do is we can create, how many of you know about Scratch files? Okay, just a few of you. So Scratch files are temporary files that can be used as Go files, HTML files, basically like your Go playground, but local and in the IDE. So this Scratch file contains some source code that was written by the developer which wrote the example function for the read file. And now you can start playing with it in your own project. You get completion and so on and so forth. So in a sense, it's much better than the Go playground. Let's go back to our code now. So I said read file. Okay, and let's read the file tpl go html. Okay, so that's my file. And you see that now the IDE complains about an unhandled error. So it means that our function here, if I maximize this, returns an error. So we should handle this. Let's handle this using the postfix completion and the new .var option, which will create, let's say, file and error as variables. Now we can also do err dot, and again, postfix completion. We can say rr, and then we get this part. Now, main function doesn't return any value, so we get an empty return statement, but we can replace this with, let's say, err.panic. And we get the code to handle the error. Okay, so now, moving forward, we need to have a template. So, template new, and let's give it the name demo. And then let's parse the template. And our source is in file. So now the IDE says there's a red issue here, which is even worse. And it says cannot use file, which is slice of bytes, as type string. So let's see if we can fix this. Alt-Enter, convert to string. So that's one of the ways to handle this. And again, .var. Not nil, ERR panic. Okay, so now let's execute the template quickly. We want to write the template to standard output. So std out, and we want to give it some data. So let's say page. Okay, and we know this one returns an error, so we can invoke RR again. And we can do .panic again if this is not nil. Okay, so now we have an unresolved variable named page. Let's construct this. Alt-Enter, create variable, and we don't have a type yet, so let's just say it's going to be page. And it needs to have a title, demo page, and some users. Let's say of type user. Okay, so let me scroll up a bit. So that's a lot of red code. That's a lot of errors, unresolved error, and so on. So let's fix this. First, what we can do is we can create a type page. And we have the structure. Next, we can create a field. And we have the field. Next, let's see this type here. Let's create the type user, which is a structure itself. And we can have the field ID string. Okay? So, next, let's create users. And we have the users now. And let's create the user variable as well of type user. And we can say that it has the ID, let's say Florin. Okay? So now if we run this, and yes, that's the neon cat. My computer is very slow, so watching neon cat makes it easier. Am I in power mode? Surprisingly, I'm not. Okay. So I don't know, my computer is slow. Usually it's faster. But the point is, we now have the template rendered, yes? So in about, let's say 8 minutes, with translation, which, thank you for the translations, we got this render fairly quick. Now, let's make this a bit more interactive. So usually we would use a database, yes? From our application. We wouldn't have the data embedded like this. Raise your hand if you use MySQL, Postgres, Cassandra, any database like that. Okay. How many of you do you know that we have support for those databases in the IDE? Raise your hand. Okay. For those of you who don't know, we do have support for databases. Go to the right side under database and choose plus data source and then the database of your choice. Postgres, Amazon, ClickHouse, SQLite, MySQL, and so on. Right, but now I said my laptop is very slow, and it also doesn't have a database running. So let's launch a database. Let's see if this actually works. I have a Docker file which will launch a Postgres database, hopefully. So let's go here and say run Postgres. Now, okay. By the way, how many of you know about this plugin, the key promoter one? Okay, so this plugin in here tells you how many times you missed a shortcut. So if you want to learn our IDEs, not just the Go IDE, but IntelliJ IDEA, PyCharm, or others, you can use this IDE, this plugin, and you can go here to plugins, key promoter X as a plugin. And that's the name of the plugin. So back to our database. We see here that we have a Docker deployment. We see the log. We see the ports that are running. We have the properties of the container, environment variables, and deployment log. So hopefully this will work. Let's see. Go to database, plus data source, Postgres. Let's type the name of the database, the username and the password, and let's click on test. We wait a bit, and it works. So I can connect successfully to the database. Not only that, but I can use an SSH tunnel or SSL certificate to connect to the database. So it can be a secure connection. Let's choose from the schemas here what I want to see, because I don't want to see all the databases on my server. I'm just interested in GoLand, specifically the public schema. Okay, later. So now we see the database here, and we see that there is nothing in it. Let's go back here in the PG file, and let me make this a bit bigger for you. So we can create a table. Okay, and after creating the table, we can insert something in the database. So again, I'm just pressing Alt-Enter, nothing else. And let's see if we have the data in the database. Select our data, and we see that what I inserted in this query here shows up in the ID. So probably everything works okay. Not only that, but if I look here, now the ID sees the user table and all the details for it. If you would go here to the schema, for example, and you would say right-click and then select diagrams and show visualization, you could see the visualization of your database. So we can create a relation diagram for all your tables and schemas that the database has. In this case, I only have one table. Okay, so let's move on. I said we want to get the data from the database, right? How would I do this? Well, I would say something like this, SQL X connect. And this is a live template because I don't want to type all this text here. Okay? Now, you've seen that this was read before, and now the IDE says it's not read anymore. And that's the fact that we use automatic imports. So whenever we can, we detect the import paths, and we import the packages that match. And let's also add the database driver, which is under GitHub and libpq. Okay, so we've connected to the database. Let's try to get the user from here. And I know I can do db get user. And now let's write the query. So I would say automatically GoLand recognize that this is a SQL query, and it starts offering me completion and assistance for it, okay? And I can say select star from, let's say, Well, if it's a new database or if it's a big database, I probably want to know where I should select this from. So I can choose to explore the database or the schema itself or the table in this case. And I will choose users because I know where my data is. And now I have all the columns from that table available in the completion mode, right? So I can say where ID equals 1. So let's say we select just this user. And again, we probably have to handle the error. And let's say ERR panic. Okay. So now we are reading the data from the database. There is one more thing that we need to change here. This one should be now an int, not a string, because it's a number. So if we run this again, and the neon cat is faster this time around, well, neon cat was faster. This one was missing a destination name. So let's add quickly those as well. Username, we are not that good yet. Promise will improve. And job string. So again, and now we have the template render. Okay? Cool. So our template renders still. But what if I want to write the template? So if I go here and I try completion in the template, there's nothing that helps me to write the template code. Yes? So that's a problem because I want to be able to know if I have the right field or not, like it happened before. What you can do now in 2018.3 is that you can use Alt-Enter and then select specified .type. And when you do that, you get a list of all the types that you have in your project, and we can choose what matches better. And in this case, it's going to be page. OK, so now if I go range and use completion again, now I have completion in my template. So I say users, and I can say, well, render the username instead. OK, let's quickly run this. And it's not that quick. But this one changed from a number, from 1, to my Twitter handle. OK, so what now? Now that we have completion here, we also can do navigation. So if I say go to declaration, we can jump back to the structured declaration and to the field itself. We can also say, how many of you are familiar with the rename refactoring? Okay, cool. So we can rename the field from here to, let's say, login name. And it changes automatically in the definition place as well as any other usage places. Okay. So my code is a bit too big now for just a single function. If I look at main, I have about 30 lines of code. Let's break this down. What I can do is I can select this, and I can say refactor this, which is the shortcut below, and I can say extract method. And I can name the function that I have, generate template. And this allows me to do the function, it returns an error, and it returns the template itself, okay? Now, I know that in Go, usually you put the error at the end of the function. So let's do again, refactor this, and we can now say, again, new in 2018.3, change signature. And we can change the function signature. So let's move the error at the end. And I can say refactor. First, the variables here switched between themselves, right? So it was error and then T. Now it's T and then error. And the same for the function signature. We changed the types between them as well as the return types. And we can also say, well, we handled the error everywhere, yes? So we know that we handled the error here and the error above as well. So there's no need to return the error in this case. So let's say change signature again, and let's remove the parameter completely. Sorry. Okay. So now we only leave the template value returned. And that's it. The IDE did the work for me. So from the next version on, if you ever need to change the function signature, use refactor this, change signature. Don't change function calls manually. Okay. But what if I want to take this function and move it to another package? Let's say my file now is so big that I want to split it into Go packages. Well, one way to do this would be to say refactor this, move, and then we can choose what we want to move to a new package or to an existing one. So we can say, yes, I want to have a new package, and let's say the file name should be my file. Okay, I do get an error here if I look at this one because it says that because generate function, generate template is not exported, I will not be able to access it from the main function. So let's export this, and let's do the refactor. So now, I have a new package with the new file that I created. It has the correct imports for the function to work. It has the correct export type. And if we go back here, we also have the correct reference to the package updated. Okay? So if you want to move this to another place, that's the way to do it. Of course, if you change your mind, you can say undo, and we undo everything. All the directories that you created, all the files that you created, all the references and so on. So this is pretty safe to use. Okay. Now, I've shown you most of the new cool features that we have. I want to ask you, how many of you are using Kubernetes? Raise your hand. Okay. So we have a Kubernetes plugin as well, which we are constantly working on. And let's say right now we have a feature to jump to labels as well. So pretty much we are adding what we have support for Go into Kubernetes as well. So we can jump to the matching label, and from the label, we can jump to where it's used. We can also say like this. Let's say I want to learn Kubernetes, right? And I want to do a deployment because I hear that this is what I should use. So I can say kdep, press enter, and then start having all the data available for me. My deployment, and then I just need the image. And if I don't know any of what this means, I can just invoke the quick documentation. And this is the documentation that you have from Kubernetes. So you don't need to go to the website anymore. You can view it in the editor. Not only that, but if I say, well, what are my options here? I can invoke the completion options to be able to do some completion for this. And if I say completion again, the available options that are remaining will be presented. So I'm fairly sure that I'm not going to make a mistake and repeat the same field twice when I cannot, and the file is too big to remember. Okay, we are running slowly out of time, so I want to give you a chance to ask a few questions. Before that happens, take another look at this page here, which will allow you to learn more about our upcoming features, existing features, and many, many other more tutorials and all the things that are related to the Go IDE. And before I finish, I want to show you a cool feature that we have for the debugger. How many of you have heard of core dumps? And I'm sorry for the translation. So core dumps are the application memory when your application has a bug and it crashes. And on Linux, you can get the core dump, and I will switch the project just a bit. So on Linux, you can generate a file when your application crashes because of a panic, and you can see what was in the memory of your application. If you go to run, open core dump, this will work on Windows, Linux, and Mac, but generating the file works only on Linux. So we need to specify the application itself, and we need to specify that memory file that we get when the application crashes. So if I click now on OK, I can see the debugger, and let's say if I scroll down enough, I can see my code here. And my code says that variable I had the value 9. So if I go here, I can say, oh, okay, this was 9, okay? So what happens with this? Why does it crash? Well, because this one is 0. So the IDE can compute that value for you to help you out. Let me show it again. Okay, so it's 0. And now I can think about it. So 100 divided by 0, crash. And that's how we get the core dump. And this is the last feature I want to show you, and I want to ask you if you have any questions. Raise your hand, and someone will get with a microphone to you. There? Can you?
日本語でも英語でも
すみません、プレゼンテーションの手法についてになっちゃうんですけれども、ショートカットがずっとプレゼンテーションで出ているところがすごく気になってまして、あれどうやって出してるのかなっていうところを。
So here's a question about the presentation plugin and
Okay.
yes, so how you can set up the presentation plugin.
So you just need to download the plugin, and that's the whole setup.
Yes. So maybe you can show the actual.
Right. So you would go to Marketplace, but I don't have internet now, and you would say Presentation Assistant. You would click on the Install button, restart the editor, and then that's it. The only change that I did was to make the font bigger, to have a bigger font for the people in the back. But that's it.
Yes, the answers. So thank you.
Cool.
I found the Kubernetes plugin that sounds good. And is there any other feature like kubectl get port or get services?
Right now, no, but we are working on getting more features into the plugin. We do have support for Helm. I will show you after the break if you want.
I see. Sounds exciting.
Yeah, we know about this and we want to get more features into that plugin, but we have to program them.
I see.
So, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Questions? If not, I'm happy to help during the Ask the Expert session at the end. Okay, so if no one else, thank you for coming tonight, and I look forward to talking to you guys.